The highway didn't have a name anymore, at least, not one anyone used. Maps still labeled it with numbers, thin gray lines threading through cornfields and forgotten towns, but locals called it the dead stretch. Trucks avoided it. Families detoured miles out of their way. And after sundown, even the animals went quiet, as if the land itself held its breath. On the night it began again, the moon hung low and swollen, the color of old bone. Evan Cole gripped the steering wheel so hard his fingers cramped. He hadn't meant to take this road. He never did. But the detour sign had been fresh, reflective paint gleaming like a lie, and by the time he realized where he was, the corn had closed in on both sides, tall, dry stalks whispering against his doors like nails dragged across wood. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Sleep meant dreams. Dreams meant him. The radio crackled, jumped between static and fragments of sermons, voices warped and pleading. Evan shut it off. Silence rushed in, thick and suffocating. His headlights carved a narrow tunnel ahead, the asphalt stretching endlessly forward, unmarked, unchanged. That was another thing people never understood about surviving something like this. The road always looks the same. Evan's chest tightened. A pressure built behind his eyes, a familiar warning. He swallowed, trying to breathe through it. Not again, he whispered. The smell hit first. Rot, iron, and something older, like damp stone and burnt hair. Evan slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly before stopping dead. His headlights illuminated something in the road. A body. No, pieces of one. They were arranged carefully, deliberately. Arms laid parallel, palms facing upward. Legs crossed at the ankles. The torso was split open, ribs peeled back like a grotesque shrine. Symbols had been carved into the flesh, deep, precise cuts that formed circular patterns and jagged lines Evan recognized instantly. His vision tunneled. The world tilted. No, he breathed. You're asleep. This is a dream. But dreams didn't smell like this. Something moved at the edge of the cornfield. Not fast. Not slow. Intentional. Evan's heart hammered so hard he felt it in his throat. His hands shook as he reached for the door lock, pressing the button again and again until it clicked uselessly beneath his thumb. Then the sound came. A low, wet clicking noise. Like joints popping. Like something stretching after a long rest. Evan's breath fogged the windshield. He stared straight ahead, afraid to look anywhere else. The symbols on the body seemed to pulse, slick with blood, catching the light at different angles. He knew those markings. He'd seen them before, in dreams, in memories he'd tried to drown with pills and alcohol and distance. They weren't just kill marks. They were instructions. The clicking stopped. A shadow fell across the road, long and distorted, stretching toward his car. Evan squeezed his eyes shut. Please, he whispered. He didn't know who he was talking to. God had stopped listening a long time ago. The shadow moved again. Then, nothing. No footsteps. No breath. No presence. Just the dead stretch of road and the corpse laid out like an offering. Evan opened his eyes. The body was gone. In its place, carved directly into the asphalt, was a single symbol, deep enough that the road itself had been gouged open. It looked ancient. Wrong. The kind of mark that made your teeth ache just looking at it. Evan screamed. 3 miles away, Sheriff Lena Morales stood beneath the flickering floodlights of a derelict church, staring at a crime scene that made her stomach twist. She'd been a cop for 23 years. She'd seen overdoses, murders, accidents so brutal they rewired something in her brain. But this felt different. Personal. Like the land was mocking her. The church had burned decades ago. Only the stone foundation remained, along with a half-collapsed steeple that leaned like a broken finger pointing at the sky. In the dirt around it, bodies had been arranged in a wide circle, 6 of them. All missing something different. Eyes. Tongues. Pieces of skin cut away with surgical care. And carved into the ground beneath each body were the same symbols. Ritual, one of her deputies muttered. Lena didn't answer. She crouched, running a gloved hand over one of the carvings. The grooves were clean, deep, almost reverent. Whoever, or whatever, had done this hadn't rushed. This isn't some cult, she said finally. Cults want witnesses. They want believers. She stood, scanning the dark fields beyond the floodlights. The corn swayed gently, though there was no wind. This wanted silence. In a motel room 2 towns over, FBI Special Agent Daniel Hargreaves studied crime scene photos spread across the bed. He'd been sent in reluctantly, more to calm the locals than to chase fairy tales. Rural hysteria followed patterns. Monsters didn't. Still, his jaw tightened as he examined the symbols. They appeared again and again across decades of unsolved cases, clustered every 23 years along the same highways, the same fields. The math didn't work anymore, though. The dates overlapped. The gaps shrank. Someone, or something, was accelerating. His phone buzzed. A single text message from an unknown number. The cycle is broken. He's awake. Daniel stared at the words, a chill creeping up his spine. Outside, far beyond the motel's buzzing neon sign, something ancient lifted its head and inhaled deeply. The smell of fear had returned. And this time, it wasn't going back to sleep. Evan Cole woke screaming. His body jolted upright on the narrow motel bed, lungs burning as if he'd been underwater. Sweat soaked his shirt, the sheets twisted tight around his legs like restraints. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, only that the smell of rot still clung to his nose and the clicking sound echoed inside his skull. Then the room came into focus. Yellowed wallpaper. A flickering lamp. A Bible tucked into the nightstand drawer like a guilty secret. Outside, a highway hummed softly, distant tires passing like whispers. Evan pressed his palms against his eyes. Blood. He could still see blood. You're awake, he muttered to himself. You're safe. The lie tasted bitter. He swung his legs over the bed and froze. Carved into the cheap wooden floorboards, directly beneath his bare feet, was the symbol. The same one from the road. The same one from his dreams. Evan staggered backward, slamming into the dresser. The lamp toppled, shattering on the floor, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the motel's buzzing neon sign bleeding red light through the curtains. No, 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 he whispered. His hands shook violently. He hadn't carved it. He knew he hadn't. But the grooves were fresh, splintered wood curled upward as if cut by something impossibly sharp. Something that had been inside his head. A memory surged forward, unbidden, merciless. Cornfields under a blood moon. Screams carried by the wind. The sound of wings unfurling, leathery and vast. And eyes, yellow, ancient, filled not with rage but recognition. It remembers you. Evan sank to his knees. He was 8 years old again, hiding beneath a rusted truck, watching boots stitched from skin walk past him. He remembered the smell then, too. The hunger. The way it leaned down, sniffed the air, and paused. Not feeding. Choosing. Evan had survived because someone else hadn't. And now the road had called him back. Sheriff Lena Morales hadn't gone home. She stood alone in her office, the clock on the wall ticking far too loud in the early hours of the morning. The case files were spread across her desk, missing persons, unsolved murders, incidents dismissed as animal attacks or drifter violence. She'd pulled records going back nearly a century. Every 23 years, like a heartbeat. Until now. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. Lena didn't notice. Her eyes traced red lines she'd drawn across a map pinned to the corkboard: highways, farm roads, abandoned churches. The symbols appeared again and again at intersections, crossroads, places where old towns had once stood before being swallowed by time. "These aren't hunting grounds," she murmured. "They're markers." A knock echoed through the office. Lena tensed, hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Deputy Ruiz stepped in, pale and wide-eyed. "Sheriff," he said quietly. "We got another one." Lena closed her eyes for a brief, exhausted second. "Where?" Ruiz swallowed. "Miller's Field. Same setup." "But," he hesitated. "But what?" "There's something different this time." Daniel Hargreave didn't believe in monsters. He believed in patterns. In psychology. In the human capacity for cruelty when wrapped in myth and fear. But as he stood at the edge of Miller's Field, boots sinking into damp soil, that belief began to fracture. The body lay at the center of the cornfield, stalks flattened outward in a perfect circle. The victim's chest cavity had been hollowed out entirely. Organs removed with deliberate care. And carved into the exposed spine was a symbol Daniel had only seen in obscure, untranslated texts. "This isn't random," he said, voice low. Lena stood beside him, arms crossed tight. "No. It's a message." "For who?" She looked out across the field, unease tightening her jaw. "Someone who already knows." Daniel crouched, examining the cuts. "These marks predate Christianity," he said. "They're older than most recorded religions. The symbols suggest anchoring. Binding." "Binding what?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't like where his research had led him. Didn't like the way the text spoke of hunger as a cycle, not of feeding, but of maintenance. "A threshold entity," he said finally. "Something that doesn't fully belong here." Lena scoffed softly. "You're talking like this thing's real." Daniel met her gaze. "I'm talking like someone wanted us to stop pretending it isn't." A gust of wind rushed through the corn, bending stalks low. For a split second, Daniel could have sworn he heard breathing. Slow, patient, massive. Then it was gone. Miles away, deep beneath an abandoned slaughterhouse, something ancient stirred. Its wings twitched, muscles flexing after too long restrained. Symbols glowed faintly along stone walls slick with centuries of blood. The creature inhaled, drawing in memories carried by the land, fear soaked deep into soil, screams etched into wood and bone. It remembered every cycle. Every face. Every soul that had slipped through its claws. But this time was different. The hunger was sharper. Louder. Unending. The ritual was already in motion. And somewhere above, a survivor marked by fate carved symbols in his sleep, unknowingly answering a call older than God. The creeper smiled. This cycle wouldn't end in slumber. It would end in permanence. Evan Cole didn't remember leaving the motel. One moment he was on his knees, staring at the symbol carved into the floor, and the next he was driving, hands locked on the wheel, headlights cutting through darkness thick as tar. The radio was on again, whispering in fragments. Old hymns played backward. Voices chanting in a language that made his temples throb. The road signs were wrong. Mile markers repeated themselves. One. One again. One again. The cornfields leaned inward, bowing toward the asphalt as if listening. Evan's chest tightened. His reflection stared back at him from the windshield, eyes rimmed red, face gaunt, something else flickering beneath his skin. He could feel it now. A pressure behind his ribs. A pull. Like an invisible hook buried deep in his soul, tugging him forward. "You don't own me," he whispered. The whisper came back. Not yet. The car stalled. The engine died with a choking rattle, headlights flickering once before plunging the road into darkness. Evan slammed the steering wheel, panic surging. No, no, no. He shoved the door open and stepped out. The air smelled wrong. Sweet. Rotting. Heavy with decay and damp earth. Somewhere deep in the fields, something shifted, corn stalks parting slowly, deliberately. Evan backed away from the car. That's when he saw them. Dozens of scarecrows stood scattered through the field, half hidden among the corn. They weren't the usual stuffed sacks and straw men. These were constructed with care. With reverence. Human clothes. Human proportions. Human skin. Some were missing faces. Others wore stitched expressions frozen in silent screams. Symbols were carved into their chests, arms spread wide as if welcoming something from the sky. Evan's legs gave out. This isn't real, he sobbed. This isn't real. A shadow passed overhead. The sound followed, a slow, powerful hump of wings displacing air. Evan screamed as something landed behind him with enough force to make the ground shudder. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. The smell alone told him. You remember, the voice rasped, not spoken aloud, but pressed directly into his skull. Ancient. Amused. Hungry. Evan shook violently. You were asleep. You're supposed to be asleep. A clawed hand brushed his shoulder, not gripping, just testing. Skin peeled beneath its touch, memories flaring like open wounds. The rules were never laws, the voice whispered. They were habits. Something sharp pressed against the back of Evan's neck, just enough to draw blood. And habits can be broken. Sheriff Lena Morales stood at the edge of Miller's field, bile rising in her throat. They'd found Deputy Ruiz's cruiser abandoned on the dirt road, driver's door open, radio hissing static. His body lay 50 yards into the corn, arranged on his knees, head tilted skyward, eyes removed with brutal precision. But it was what surrounded him that made Lena's hands tremble. Symbols burned into the soil glowed faintly, as if the earth itself were bruised. The air hummed. Her radio crackled with overlapping voices, none of them human. Daniel Hargreaves stepped carefully through the flattened stalks, face pale. This wasn't a kill, he said quietly. Lena swallowed hard. Then what the hell was it? Daniel crouched beside Ruiz's body. An offering. Lena stared at him. You don't believe that? I didn't, he said. I don't think I get a choice anymore. He pulled out a weathered notebook, flipping to a page filled with sketches of symbols and frantic notes. I found references to this in a monastery archive in Prague. They called it the last cycle. Lena's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Daniel exhaled shakily. It means the creature isn't just feeding anymore. It's transitioning. Into what? Into something permanent. The corn rustled violently. Both of them turned as something massive moved beneath the stalks. Circling, unseen, patient. Lena raised her gun, though every instinct screamed it wouldn't matter. Daniel, she whispered, tell me. How to kill it? Daniel didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Beneath the abandoned slaughterhouse, candles flared to life one by one. Figures emerged from the shadows, men and women draped in tattered robes stitched with symbols carved into flesh. Their faces were scarred, eyes hollowed by devotion rather than fear. At the center of the chamber stood an altar of bone. The creeper descended slowly, wings folding with a wet, grinding sound. It towered over them, ancient eyes glowing with cruel intelligence. They knelt. It walks again, one whispered reverently. The creeper's lips peeled back in something that might have once been a smile. I never stopped. A robed figure stepped forward, voice trembling with ecstasy. The vessel has been marked. The survivor remembers. The creeper's gaze sharpened. Images flickered through its mind, Evan's childhood terror, his guilt, his lingering hunger for meaning. He will do, it said. And the sacrifice? Another asked. The creeper tilted its head, listening to distant screams carried through soil and memory. Willing souls taste better. Above ground, thunder rolled across a clear sky. And on the dead stretch of highway, Evan Cole screamed as the cornfield closed around him, every stalk watching, every shadow remembering. The road had him now. And it wasn't letting go. Evan came back to himself on cold concrete. The smell hit first, old blood, rusted metal, damp stone. His cheek was pressed against the floor, skin stuck slightly as he lifted his head. The room was vast and hollow, lit only by candles burning with sickly yellow flames. Symbols ringed the walls, carved deep and layered over one another as if rewritten across centuries. He knew this place. Not from memory. From dreams. His wrists were bound above him with chains that bit into bone. When he moved, the sound echoed, metal on metal, a slow, ceremonial rhythm. Panic surged, but beneath it was something worse. Recognition. You brought yourself here, a voice said gently. Evan twisted, heart hammering. A woman stepped into the candlelight. Her face was scarred, lips split and re-healed, eyes bright with a devotion that made his skin crawl. I didn't, he rasped. You dragged me. She smiled softly. No. We only opened the road. Behind her, others emerged from the shadows. Robed figures, their exposed skin carved with the same symbols Evan had seen on flesh, soil, and asphalt. They watched him like congregants awaiting a sermon. The creeper chose you, the woman continued. Long ago. Evan laughed, the sound cracking into hysteria. It tried to kill me. And failed, she said. That makes you different. A low sound rolled through the chamber then, a breath deeper than lungs should allow. The candles flickered violently as something massive shifted above them. Evan felt it before he saw it. The creeper descended slowly from the rafters, wings folding inward like a closing tomb. Its eyes locked onto Evan with unmistakable familiarity. You lived, it pressed into his mind. You remembered. Evan screamed as memories tore free, faces of children it had taken instead of him, their terror branded into his soul. He thrashed against the chains, sobbing. I didn't want this, he cried. I didn't ask for you. No one ever does, the creeper replied. But some are shaped by survival. It stepped closer. The air grew heavy, crushing. Evan could feel the creature's hunger, vast, endless, but there was something else now. Expectation. You're wrong, Evan whispered desperately. I won't help you. The creeper tilted its head. You already are. Sheriff Lena Morales stared at the map like it might confess. Every symbol. Every body. Every road. They converged on one place, the abandoned slaughterhouse outside town, condemned since the 70s. She felt cold as realization set in. It's not hiding, she said quietly. It's building something. Daniel Hargreaves stood beside her, knuckles white against the table. A ritual site. Anchoring points across the county. Lena met his eyes. And the center? Daniel tapped the slaughterhouse. There. A deputy burst into the room. Sheriff, we got a call. A trucker found carvings on the highway. Fresh. Same symbols. Lena grabbed her jacket. It's accelerating. As they drove, night pressed in on all sides. The field seemed closer than they should have been, shadows bending toward the cruiser. Lena kept one hand on her gun, the other clenched tight. Daniel, she said, voice low, you keep saying, willing sacrifice. What does that mean? He hesitated. The texts say the ritual can't be completed through force. The soul has to choose. Choose what? To replace it. Lena's stomach dropped. Replace the creeper. Daniel shook his head slowly. Anchor it. Bind it permanently to this world so it never sleeps again. That's worse, she whispered. Yes, he said. That's the point. Back in the chamber, the cult began to chant. The sound crawled under Evan's skin, vibrating his bones. Symbols ignited along the walls, glowing faint red. He felt something opening inside him, old fear, old guilt, all the pain he'd carried since childhood. The creeper loomed closer. You survived because you were meant to, it whispered. The cycle marked you. I was a child, Evan sobbed. And now you are broken enough to understand. The woman stepped forward, holding a blade fashioned from bone. When the ritual is complete, she said reverently, your soul will bind the gateway. The creeper will walk forever. No more sleep. No more cycles. Evan shook violently. And me? Her smile trembled. You will become the lock. The creeper leaned in, its breath hot and foul. For the first time, Evan saw something beneath its hunger. Fear. I will never rest again, it said. And neither will the world. Something snapped inside Evan then. Not fear, but clarity. He saw the road stretching endlessly. The bodies. The cycles repeating. The innocent lives swallowed by time. You're lying, he whispered. The creeper stiffened. You need me, Evan said, voice growing steadier. If I refuse, you fail. Silence slammed into the chamber. The cultists murmured anxiously. The creeper's eyes burned. You will choose, it said softly. Everyone does. Evan lifted his head, tears streaking his face. Then let me choose something else. Above ground, Lena and Daniel arrived at the slaughterhouse gates as the sky split with thunder. Symbols glowed faintly along the building's walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. The ritual had begun. And inside, a survivor prepared to defy a monster that had never been told no. Even if it meant damning himself forever. The slaughterhouse screamed. Not with sound, though there was plenty of that, but with pressure, with a wrongness that made the air feel thick enough to choke on. The symbols carved into the walls pulsed faster now, glowing a deep, infected red. Evan felt each throb inside his chest, synchronized with his heartbeat, as if something ancient had wrapped its fingers around his soul and begun to squeeze. The cult's chanting rose, fractured and desperate. You cannot refuse, the scarred woman hissed, her calm cracking. You were spared for this. Evan's wrists burned where the chains bit into flesh. Blood dripped down his arms, splashing onto the concrete floor. The moment it touched the symbols, they flared brighter. He realized then the truth. The ritual wasn't just using him. It was feeding on his pain. You don't want a willing soul, Evan said hoarsely. You want a broken one. The creeper loomed inches from his face. Its eyes glowed like dying suns, ancient and furious. Willingness is born from understanding, it replied. And suffering teaches quickly. Evan laughed, a raw, ugly sound. Then you miscalculated. With a scream that tore his throat bloody, he yanked his arms downward. Bone cracked. The chains screamed as one of the hooks tore free from the wall, ripping chunks of concrete with it. Evan collapsed forward, gasping, agony blinding him, but he was free. The cult erupted into chaos. Stop him. Hold the circle. The creeper roared, wings snapping outward, knocking cultists off their feet like toys. You will not ruin this, it thundered inside Evan's skull. Evan staggered toward the altar of bone at the chamber's center. The blade lay there, slick, curved, humming faintly. He knew what it was now. Not a weapon. A key. Above ground, Sheriff Lena Morales kicked in the rusted slaughterhouse door as Daniel shouted behind her. The smell hit them like a wall. Blood and rot and something impossibly old. The symbols carved into the walls burned brighter as they moved. Deeper inside. Lena's radio screamed with static, voices overlapping, pleading. "Daniel," she gasped, "tell me we're not too late." He didn't answer. They reached the central chamber just as Evan collapsed against the altar, clutching the bone blade. His eyes met Lena's across the room, wild, terrified, but painfully clear. "Sheriff," he croaked. "Don't let it choose for me." The creeper turned slowly, its massive frame blocking half the chamber. For the first time, Lena saw it fully. Every stitch of flesh, every scar, every unnatural curve of muscle and wing. Her hand shook as she raised her gun. "Get away from him," she said, voice barely steady. The creeper laughed. The sound rattled her bones. "You are irrelevant," it told her. "This is between hunger and survival." Daniel stepped forward, eyes locked on Evan. "Listen to me," he shouted. "The texts, they say the sacrifice has to be willing. If you die without choosing, the ritual collapses." Evan stared at the blade in his hands. The cultists were scrambling now, reforming the circle, carving new symbols into their own flesh to compensate for the broken chains. Blood soaked the floor, feeding the glow. The creeper advanced. "Choose," it whispered. "Bind me and end the chaos of cycles. Or refuse, and watch me tear this world open forever." Evan's vision blurred. He saw flashes of futures, highways slick with blood, cities darkened by wings overhead, generations raised knowing only fear. Then he saw something else. Silence. Emptiness. A world without him. "I won't replace you," Evan said quietly. The creeper froze. "I won't anchor you," Evan continued. His voice shook, but it didn't break. "But I'll do something worse." He plunged the blade into his own chest. The scream that followed wasn't human. The symbols exploded with light as Evan collapsed to his knees, blood pouring over the altar. The cultists shrieked in terror. The creeper reeled backward, wings thrashing wildly. "No!" it roared. "You must choose." "I did," Evan whispered, blood bubbling at his lips. "I choose, to end the road." Daniel stared in horror. "Evan, what did you do?" Evan smiled faintly, tears mixing with blood. "I became the interruption." The symbols twisted, warping, collapsing inward on themselves. The ritual circle shattered. The glow dimmed to a sickly flicker. The creeper screamed, not in rage, but in panic. For the first time in its endless existence, it felt something new. Uncertainty. The chamber began to collapse. Stone cracked. Beams snapped. The cultists fled, screaming, some crushed beneath falling debris, others dragged screaming into shadows that tore open briefly before sealing shut. Lena grabbed Daniel as the floor buckled. "We have to go." Daniel looked back at Evan, horror etched into his face. "We can't leave him." Evan shook his head weakly. "You already saved me," he whispered. "A long time ago. You just didn't know it." The creeper lunged toward him, claws outstretched. But invisible forces yanked it backward, dragging it toward the collapsing symbols. Evan locked eyes with it. "You never owned the cycle," he said softly. "You were just trapped in it." The last thing Lena saw before the chamber imploded was Evan's body dissolving into light and ash, pulled into the fractured symbols like a scream swallowed by the earth. Then darkness took them. Miles away, the highway fell silent. No wings beat overhead. No clicking echoed through cornfields. The symbols carved into roads and flesh faded, leaving scars that would never fully heal, but no longer burned. The cycle was broken. But something else had begun. Deep beneath the earth, where the ritual collapsed but did not die, a presence stirred, smaller, quieter, watchful. Not hungry. Waiting. The road no longer belonged to the creeper. But it was not empty. And somewhere in the darkness between worlds, Evan Cole opened his eyes. No longer human, no longer prey. Bound to the shadows of the highway itself. The price of never sleeping had been paid. And the night remembered. The first report came in 3 days later. Sheriff Lena Morales was standing in her kitchen, staring at a coffee cup she hadn't touched since dawn, when the radio on the counter crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice trembled, not with panic, but confusion. "Sheriff, we've got a call from Route 19. Driver says the road changed." Lena closed her eyes. Since the slaughterhouse collapsed, sleep had become impossible. Every time she shut her eyes, she saw Evan Cole's smile as the light took him. Calm, resolved, gone. The creeper had vanished. No bodies. No wings in the sky. The town breathed again. But peace felt wrong. "What do you mean, changed?" Lena asked. A pause. Static hissed like breath through teeth. "He says the asphalt looks wet. Like it's moving." Lena grabbed her jacket. Daniel Hargreaves stood alone in the FBI's temporary field office, surrounded by stacks of files that no longer made sense. The creeper's pattern, 23 years, strict cycles, predictable hibernation, had collapsed entirely. The math was dead. Yet the fear wasn't. He stared at satellite images taken since the ritual's collapse. The highways were clean. No scorch marks. No symbols. But there were gaps. Places where cameras glitched. Where GPS data looped endlessly. Where vehicles vanished for minutes, or hours, before reappearing miles down the road with drivers unable to remember what happened in between. Daniel rubbed his temples. "You didn't destroy it," he murmured to the empty room. "You displaced it." The thought made his blood run cold. Route 19 smelled like rain and rust. Lena stepped out of her cruiser, boots sinking slightly into asphalt that felt soft. The headlights illuminated a stretch of road that shimmered faintly, as though coated in oil. Cornfields lined both sides, silent and still. A semi-truck sat abandoned ahead, its driver pacing in circles, clutching his head. "I didn't hit anything," the man babbled when Lena approached. "I swear. The road just opened. Opened." "How?" she asked gently. He looked at her, eyes bloodshot. Like it was breathing. Lena followed his gaze. The asphalt rippled. Not like heat distortion. Like muscle flexing beneath skin. Her radio crackled violently. For a split second, she heard Evan's voice, faint, distant, layered beneath static. "Turn back." Lena staggered. "Evan." The sound cut out. The road bulged upward, forming a shallow rise. Symbols, familiar and wrong, began to appear beneath the surface, glowing dimly as if seen through flesh. Daniel arrived moments later, skidding to a stop. He stepped out slowly, eyes wide. "Oh my God," he whispered. "It's not a place anymore." "What is it?" Lena asked, though she already felt the answer crawling under her skin. Daniel swallowed. "It's a threshold." The air thickened. The smell returned, not rot this time, but iron and ozone and rain hitting hot pavement. A shape moved beneath the road, traveling fast, flowing forward like a shadow under ice. The trucker screamed. The asphalt split open beneath him. Not wide. Just enough. Hands, human hands, burst upward, gripping his ankles. His screams cut short as he was dragged down, the road sealing behind him with a wet, final sound. Silence followed. Lena stood frozen, gun shaking uselessly in her grip. "That wasn't the creeper," she whispered. "No," Daniel said hoarsely. "That was something else." That night, the dream spread. Across town, people woke gasping, convinced they'd been driving endlessly through darkness. They spoke of headlights that never reached the horizon. Of voices whispering from beneath the road, warning them to turn back. Some listened. Some didn't. And those who didn't were found later, cars abandoned, engines still warm, doors open. No blood. No struggle. Just tire marks leading nowhere. Deep within the highway's shadow, Evan Cole remembered how to breathe. Not with lungs, he no longer had those, but with awareness. With intention. He felt the road in every direction, every crack and seam, every mile soaked in memory and death. He felt them too. Drivers. Fear. Guilt. Hunger. He could stop it. Slow it. Redirect it. But not erase it. The ritual hadn't destroyed the hunger. It had taught it patience. Evan tried to scream a warning, but the road only trembled in response. His thoughts echoed outward as distortions, radio static, flickering lights. "Turn back," he begged. Some heard him. Others felt something different, something cold and curious, slipping along the edges of his consciousness. The creeper had been hunger given shape. Evan was becoming something far worse. A gate. Daniel sat in his motel room at dawn, hands shaking as he wrote. "The sacrifice worked," he scribbled. But not as intended. The entity no longer hunts from the sky or fields. It inhabits infrastructure. Movement. Transition. He stopped, pen hovering. It feeds on choice. The realization made him sick. The creeper had taken victims. This thing waited for them to come willingly. At sunrise, Route 19 looked normal again. Dry. Solid. Empty. But beneath it, something watched. Waiting for the next set of headlights. Waiting for doubt. Waiting for someone who wouldn't turn back. And somewhere deep within the endless stretch of road, Evan Cole felt the night settling in. Longer than any before it. And understood the final cruelty of his sacrifice. The cycle hadn't ended. It had evolved. And the road would never sleep again. The first snow fell in silence. It dusted the dead stretch of highway like ash settling over a grave, smoothing cracks, hiding scars. From a distance, Route 19 looked peaceful, almost beautiful. Cars passed without slowing. Tires hummed. Headlights cut clean lines through the dark. Lena Morales watched from her cruiser parked on an overpass, engine off, radio muted. She hadn't worn her badge in weeks. Officially, the case was closed. Gas leaks. Sinkholes. Psychological trauma. The FBI had buried it under reports and redactions so thick the truth could barely breathe. Daniel had been reassigned, his final memo locked behind clearance levels that didn't exist. But Lena stayed. Because the road still felt wrong. She'd learned to listen now, not with ears, but with instincts sharpened by loss. The air over Route 19 carried a pressure like a held breath. Some nights, her headlights flickered when cars passed beneath the bridge. Some nights, the radio whispered her name. And sometimes she heard Evan. Not as a voice. As hesitation. A semi roared beneath the overpass, then slowed abruptly. Brake lights flared. The truck swerved, correcting itself, then continued on. Lena exhaled shakily. "He warned you," she whispered into the dark. "Didn't he?" Daniel Hargreaves stood miles away at the edge of another highway, watching crews pour fresh asphalt over a stretch recently deemed unstable. He knew better. They all did, whether they admitted it or not. You couldn't repair what had become aware. He felt it sometimes when driving, those brief moments when the road seemed to stretch just a little too long, when the darkness ahead felt deeper than it should. When a thought not his own brushed against his mind. Turn back. Daniel always did. Others didn't. Across the country, reports accumulated quietly. Vehicles lost time. Drivers arrived home hours late with no memory of the missing miles. Some woke screaming, convinced they'd felt hands beneath their tires, guiding them. And a few, very few, were never found at all. No bodies. No blood. Just roads that no longer connected to where they were supposed to lead. Deep beneath Route 19, Evan Cole endured. There was no pain anymore. No body to ache or break. There was only awareness, vast and fractured, stretched across miles of asphalt and buried stone. He felt every footstep. Every doubt. Every moment someone chose the road because it was faster, because it was empty, because it promised escape. That was where the hunger lived now. Not in flesh. In decisions. Evan had learned the truth too late, the ritual didn't need death. It needed permission. Every time someone ignored the warning in their gut, every time they chose to keep driving when fear told them to stop, the road fed. He tried to resist it. Tried to narrow the gaps. To soften the pull. He bent radio waves. Flickered lights. Warped mile markers. Turn back, he whispered into static and shadow. Some listened. Those people arrived home shaken, changed, but alive. Others felt something else. A curiosity. A thrill. The road opened for them. Not violently. Gently. And Evan felt each one slip away like a piece of himself being torn loose. This was the price. Not damnation. Responsibility. Far below the road's surface, deeper than Evan's reach, something stirred. Not the creeper. That hunger had been simple. Crude. Honest in its brutality. This was older. Quieter. It had watched cycles rise and fall long before wings ever darkened the sky. It had waited as Evan's sacrifice rewrote the rules, creating something new, something useful. A perfect threshold. A living lock that didn't know it was a door. You endure well, it murmured, a thought without language. Evan recoiled, what passed for his consciousness tightening. You're not welcome. A ripple of amusement passed through the dark. Nothing welcomes me. That has never stopped me. For the first time since the ritual, Evan felt fear. Not for himself. For what would come after him. On the anniversary of the slaughterhouse collapse, Lena drove Route 19 at dawn. She shouldn't have. She knew that. But grief doesn't obey warnings. The road stretched ahead, empty and pale beneath the rising sun. Mile markers ticked by normally. No static. No whispers. Then her radio clicked on. Sheriff Morales, Evan's voice said softly. Tears blurred her vision. Evan. I can't hold it forever, he said. Not afraid. Just tired. The road wants what comes next. What comes next, she whispered. A pause. Then, someone who doesn't feel guilt. The road shuddered faintly. Lena's engine stalled. Her heart pounded as the asphalt beneath her tires darkened, rippling like skin. Evan, she begged. Tell me how to stop it. There was sorrow in his answer. You already know, he said. The cycle never ends. It only changes hands. The engine roared back to life. The road stilled. Lena sobbed as she sped away, the sun breaking fully over the horizon behind her. That night, the highways across the country carried on as they always had, stretching forward, promising arrival, hiding consequences. Most people drove without thinking. A few hesitated. And somewhere between destinations, something ancient smiled, not with teeth or hunger, but with patience. Because cycles don't end. They wait. And the road, endless, watching, alive, was already preparing for the next willing soul. Tagline. The cycle was never meant to end.